New Pentium 4 chip. How much better will your game run on a 1.7 gigahertz CPU? We'll see in just a moment. Well, you can have the best graphics and sound cards in your computer, but underneath it all, you still have to be able to process the bits fast enough to drive everything. So how important is the speed of your CPU to great gameplay? Well, let's find out now from Tim Thraves of Intel. Hi, Tim.
How you doing?
And your new bit is the P4, the Pentium 4, obviously, and you've got, what, a 1.7 gigahertz chip we're going to look at here?
Yep, we're at speeds up to 1.7 gigahertz on the Pentium 4.
Now, we hear that a game's been optimized for the P4. What does that mean to me?
Well, bottom line, it's going to be better or faster gameplay, but that could show in terms of more realistic environments, smooth gameplay and animation. Basically, it's writing to the advances that you see in the Pentium 4 processor today.
All right, you have a couple of examples here. Let's take a look at some games to sort of demonstrate the things you're talking about. This is a game called Giants, and what should we pay attention to here that we say, hey, is the result of running this thing on a really fast processor?
Sure, so some of the things you definitely look at first is the trees. Notice how they're actually blowing in the wind.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know, this is definitely something that in older, prior generations you wouldn't see. It would have been a static tree that you don't see at all.
Okay.
You see the realistic lighting effects. You see that the water looks pretty realistic compared to water of a couple years ago.
And the motion of the character there is pretty smooth.
Yeah, and you can also see different camera angles of the actual player. So, so let's look around and see if we can see some other creatures here.
And obviously you can have a lot of stuff going on at the same time.
Absolutely. That's the key, is especially when you're playing online games with multiple players, smooth gameplay, no drop frames.
All right, let's go to another one. You have another game up here on the other drive, which is called Colin McRae Rally. This is a racing game, and that is probably the most demanding kind of game, right? Because you got a lot of stuff changing very quickly.
Absolutely one
And
of
if it's not realistic, it's a waste of time.
Absolutely. And this is one of the newest games out there. Again, this has been optimized for the Pentium 4 processor. So what you're going to see is, again, smoother animation, very realistic gameplay. One of the coolest things is that, you know, when you get damage on the car, it actually looks like damage. It just doesn't.
Now, another issue in a game like a racing game is there's physics realism, right? I mean, you want the thing to work the way things really work in the real world, and that's a function of what you can do with the processor.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's see if we can get a fun game on here. Let's see, we'll play in Sweden.
Get the 10,000 choices here.
Yeah, multiple choices in terms of what you can do.
All right, so we're racing in the snow here.
Right, so what we can do here is, you notice...
And it's laying down tracks in the snow, so that's pretty cool right there.
And just to prove it is, that's not my normal driving style. So what you're going to do here is, again, this is a pretty realistic game in terms of just driving it, you know, as you're driving on snow, it's not just turning.
Gotcha. And so when you crash, which of course everybody wants to do in a racing game, you're going to see the real dents and the bumps. And
absolutely. So the other thing to notice is here is you can also look at it at different camera angles, and depending on which angle that you're most comfortable playing with.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you get at this angle, this is really more demanding on the CPU, isn't it?
Absolutely, because everything's much closer, faster.
And it's still going very smooth.
Especially.
All right, I want to get another game in here, so you can stop that and let me change CDs for you, because there's one other example, a game called Can I pop it?
Absolutely.
A game called Sacrifice, which is really a good example of a new feature you've got in the P4. So let's get this baby up.
Absolutely. So again, Sacrifice was one of the first applications really to appear optimized for the Pentium 4 back in the end of last year. So let's start this up.
Now what we're going to see here while we get the game up is that the problem with a game often is you see an object in there, and as you get closer to it, it gets pixelated, it gets worse, it degrades.
Absolutely.
And you're now able to actually not only stop that, but reverse it.
Absolutely, and one of the technologies in this application is a technology that's called multi-resolution mesh. And what it does is exactly as you described. As you get closer to objects, instead of pixelating, it actually becomes clearer and crisper, which is what you would expect in real world.
All right, so let's get into this game.
Let's load up a game here.
So the game's called Sacrifice.
Yeah, from Shiny Entertainment. And what you're going to see here is right away we're loading it up into a scene that's very high resolution, lots of things going on, as you can see. There's rain, several different things flying
now
around.
find an example of this sort of MRM bit where we can get close to something and see it get more detailed rather than degrade.
Right, so let's take a look at either of these documents over here. Turn around. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk, as we get closer to these environments.
So even the tree, as we see, we actually got close to the tree, we saw more graininess in it rather than less in terms of the roots and so on.
Right, so you see right there, you can actually see that. gets much closer and better as you get closer to the object, was actually exactly opposite from what previous generations game were able to do.
All right, last question I would have for you, Tim, is we hear the numbers, you know, 1.7 gig versus whatever. Say I've got a 500 megahertz Pentium 3 right now. How much faster how much better performance will I really get out of it? It's obviously not going to multiply by 3 or 4, am I?
Sure. What you're going to notice is that in most applications, especially gaming, you're going to see anywhere from 2 to 3x of the types of performance. For example, in one application we know for sure, in Quake 3 Arena, we're seeing about a 3 to 4x performance gain. And just going from a Pentium 3 500, which gives you about 50 frames per second, on the latest 1.7 gigahertz Pentium 4, you're getting almost over 200 frames per second.
Tim, thank you very much.
Thanks.